सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
So first of all, the good news, we have a functioning parliament again, at least until now, and a new government as well. So this ends almost a 6-month-long hiatus in our governance. That is when the model code of conduct comes in, a 7-phase election carries on for more than 2 months, and basically one, nobody can take any decisions, and second, everybody is busy campaigning. So that 6-month politics holiday or holiday from governance into politics is now over. So good news. Second, with the beginning of the parliament, 3 important things have happened. All 3 look unconnected, but I will try and join the dots and explain to you why I think there is a connection and why I think it is important for us in this edition of Cut the Clutter. So first of all, the Prime Minister made a stirring speech where he said, he reached out to the opposition and he said, doesn't matter what numbers people have given you, this could also be a bit of trolling, but we will still take you seriously. Your voice, whatever you want to say, your feelings are important to us. So far, so good. The second thing that happened was quite to the contrary of this, which is that when Asaduddin Owaisi, the MP from Hyderabad, came to take his oath as an MP, there were chants of Jai Shri Ram, Vande Mataram, Bharat Mata Ki Jai. Now, looking at each one of these, there is nothing derogatory or wrong about saying Jai Shri Ram or Bharat Mata Ki Jai or Vande Mataram. But to do it when a Muslim MP is taking oath, and that to a Muslim MP who is a polarizing Muslim MP with whom you've had arguments, and the manner in which the slogans were shouted amounted to really terrible taunting, and did not do the dignity of India's parliament any good. I also have to add that Owaisi handled it very well. He's a very smart politician. He's one of the smartest parliamentarians I know, very thick-skinned and very quick-witted as well. So he in fact said there were some slogans. So he responded after taking his oath by saying Jai Bhim, which is a tribute to Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Nobody can object to it. And then he said Takbir, Allahu Akbar. And then he said Jai Hind. Again, you can have no argument. So he handled it very well. And I must say he showed masterful parliamentary craft. But the fact is that this was a polarizing beginning to the parliament session. And not really, it does look like BJP's own MPs were not following the Prime Minister's advice to reach out to the opposition and also to maintain the dignity of the House and to keep it functioning. The third thing is the Prime Minister has hit the ground running, as they say, and has immediately floated again an idea that he has talked about in the past, which is one country, one election. The argument is that every 6 months there is an election someplace in India, so model code of conduct comes in, governance comes to a standstill, there are too many policy holidays in a 5-year period of a central government, and everybody gets busy campaigning. So why don't you do it all at one point, as it used to be, say, in the pre-1967 India, and be done with it. So one election in 5 years, every state chooses who will rule it in the state and also who it wants to send to parliament. In theory, it's a good idea, but as my friend and fellow analyst, although I think I'm flattering myself when I say fellow analyst, because Yogendra Yadav is a reputed psephologist. He made a very good point in an article for ThePrint today. Please go to www.theprint.in, you will find it there, where he said, you have a problem. The problem is that model of code of conduct kicks in every time there's a state election. The problem is everybody gets busy campaigning, but the answer to that is not to compress all elections in one. And he says that's a bit like if you have a jam on a bridge. How do you solve the problem of frequent jams on a bridge? I know people in all our cities know some notorious bridges or some choke points where jams take place. And he said one thing is you can regulate traffic. Second, you can maybe build another lane on the bridge. Third, maybe you can build another bridge. But to say, and this idea that compress all elections into one is like changing the course of the river to resolve the problem of a traffic jam on the bridge. And this, as he says, is bonkers. And I think it is bonkers too. And I will tell you why. First of all, why do elections take place at different times in the states and the center? Until 1967, as I said, they were mostly smooth because all assemblies completed their full term, barring a few. Kerala was dismissed in the 50s. And the same party ruled almost all the states and the center, so there was no problem. But 67 onwards, when coalition governments came in, when sort of unstable governments came in, if I may say so, and when defections started, then governments fell frequently in state assemblies. And as governments fell, in the course of time, after a spell of president's rule, there had to be a fresh election. Because if a government falls in its first 6 months, are you going to have president's election in the next president's rule for the next 4.5 years for a simultaneous election? Or if a government falls, say, 1 year before an election, what will you do? Are you then going to amend the constitution and the constitutional scheme of things to say indefinite extension of president's rule? There are other ideas that a vote of no confidence cannot come in unless another side gets a vote of confidence. But that is a wacky idea because that is not the way our constitution was set up, in which in that case we had to completely, frankly, rewrite a new constitution and have a revolution in the country. This would amount to a revolution. Fourth, this will be unfair to smaller parties. This will also be unfair to the underdog. Now, what happens is when a party is in power at the center with a brute majority, as the Congress used to be until 67 and then later also, and as the BJP is right now, then that party, because it has a strong leader, if it's seeking votes in the same election for assembly and the center, it gets an advantage over the challenger, but definitely over the regional party. Because when the voter goes in to the polling booth, she doesn't always make the distinction between the assembly and the state, and the center. It's not as if that distinction will never be made. There are examples of both happening. We've seen, for example, just this time in Odisha, people voting, giving an overwhelming majority to Naveen Patnaik for yet another term in their state, but giving 8 seats to the BJP, 8 out of 20, which is a lot for the BJP. So those things can happen, but those things don't happen often. Those are exceptions. What this does is this gives the incumbent in the center, the big national party, a big advantage. It weakens the regional party. Now, you may have a view for or against regional party, but that is their view. Regional parties are a reality, particularly say in the south, in the east, regional parties are very, very, very strong. So to do this is going to be tough. Obviously, you don't see all leaders agreeing on this. That's the reason 7 senior leaders, including 3 serving chief ministers, have refused to attend the Prime Minister's all-party meeting on this subject because they all think it is weighted in the BJP's favor. Also because BJP then will just squash them with resources because it has now shown that with the electoral bonds, it's got almost 95% of all big corporate money raised in this election. And if BJP can do it, or any ruling party in Delhi can do it sort of in a centralized manner, then what will the state governments get, particularly if they are of the regional parties or they are of the, say, the Congress in this case? So this becomes an unfair election. Now, there are ways of resolving this. Again, Yogendra Yadav suggests some. Some we've been talking about for a long time. For example, the model code of conduct of the Election Commission has become juvenile now. Over the years, it's become a ritual. You can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. It was never meant to bring your governance to a standstill. So, respond or react or stop, but then be firm on anything that looks like a freebie or favor to the voters in a state that's going to the polls. Second, any decisions to do with that state can be held in abeyance till this period. Any inaugurations, foundation stone layings, the usual things, all those can be stopped, but all other governance must go on. Elections in a state should not affect anything to do with any other state or the center. Second, the election process has to be much shorter. I think there's a bit of an ego massage in this, and there's a self-serving sort of a sense of importance that the Election Commission has acquired over the years. A state having 5 phases, 6 phases, 7 phases, to say that I have to ferry paramilitary forces is nonsense. Maybe there is some explanation for a national election, but for state elections, definitely not. All state elections should be in one day. The election process should be over in quick time, counting, etc., etc. Otherwise, the whole idea of keeping EVMs for weeks together is frankly nonsensical, and now looks like a 20th century idea in 21st century. You can't be using a 21st century method like the EVMs and then have such a stretched out election process. Third, campaign finance reform is very important. Now, the BJP said that they were carrying out a reform, although I must say they themselves admitted that it was only half a reform with these anonymous electoral bearer bonds. But as we now see, this is no reform at all. Now, the Election Commission, we have to appreciate this, filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court asking for transparency here. Supreme Court again gave half an order, which is that they said that all recipients of these bonds shall not make public where they got the money from, but will report to the Election Commission by May 30, which is now over, in a sealed envelope who they got this money from. Now, we don't know what Election Commission has got there. We are all trying to find out. So first of all, we are hoping that Election Commission, having taken this position in the court that they should be transparent, once they get the details, they will reveal those details. But my suspicion is that Election Commission would have got nothing of substance, because by the very nature of these bonds, these are bearer bonds. They don't carry the giver's name. So any political party can say, I have no idea. Somebody just dropped them in my letterbox. Somebody just left them outside my house. Some stranger came into my office and left me a bunch of bonds. These are, once again, bearer bonds. They don't carry anybody's name. You can buy them, and then you can say, like old postal orders, older people would know, you can just put the name of the recipient. The name of the giver doesn't have to be there. But there is one place where the name of the giver is available. That is the State Bank of India, which issues these bonds. So I'm surprised that Supreme Court did not actually issue orders to the State Bank of India to make these public. Or Election Commission doesn't direct State Bank of India to make this public. It will be fully within the Election Commission's remit to do so. So this is a very big reform that is needed. Otherwise, this is becoming a very unfair election. And then if you combine everything together, one party's advantage of massive resources will play out much better than smaller parties or the weaker parties or the challengers. So this will be a very pro-incumbent situation. And this is what the Congress benefited from until the country's politics actually broke up and other parties came in. This suits the dominant incumbents. Having said that, let me also ask a question. If Prime Minister Modi is so keen on this, if his party is so keen on this, then why is he not setting an example? And the way to set an example is states, he rules most of the states now. His party rules most of the states. So why is the BJP not acting proactively to compress these elections together? For example, national elections could have been advanced by a couple of months. elections in Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh delayed by a couple of months, and those could have all been held together. So 3 big states would have been folded in with the general elections. Similarly, in a few months from now, in October, November, Haryana and Maharashtra, and then Jharkhand in December will go to the polls. All those could have been advanced and made part of the general election. All 3 have BJP state governments, so there would have been no objection. But these are BJP state governments. Now, if the BJP wants other parties to make this sacrifice for one party, one country, one election, they could have easily taken almost half the country to elections at the same time, but the BJP did not do it because it did not suit them. They did not want to take the risk. Again, in February, Delhi comes up for elections. So at least now, combine Delhi, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, Haryana, do them all together and then keep working in that direction to keep bringing them closer. So you will not get a perfect solution, but you will get a better solution. But BJP has to act on that. No consensus is required. It doesn't have to reach out anywhere. They just have to do it. Second thing, all parties have to get together and throw out this outdated model code of conduct. It is just an ego massage for the election commissions. Come up with something more practical. Also throw out some stuff about hate speech, and election commission should not be speech nanny. At least if you make that clear, then people's expectations and the notion that election commission is being partisan will also go away. Next, campaign finance reform. At least make these bonds public now, and also take away the bearer nature of these bonds. Companies have now to just make sure companies and people have to disclose how much they have paid and to whom. This is not like secret ballot. You're paying money to a party. Why should you have the same secrecy as that for your vote? You could give money to one party and vote for the other. Next, BJP has to create a better sense of reassurance and confidence among the opposition, which it has as yet failed to do. And that's where I said those slogans when Owaisi was being sworn in are also relevant, because those slogans, when the Prime Minister reached out to the opposition on day 1, on day 3 he again reached out to the opposition to say let's get together for one country, one election. On day 2 his MPs behaved, and I would say in a very uncouth, I mean, I don't want to say juvenile because that's an insult to young people, an uncouth and unthinking and immature manner, which doesn't work with his politics of outreach. So that is the big political picture. I've tried to declutter it for you in a few minutes. If you liked watching this, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please keep asking your friends and family to do so. We'll be adding new features in English as well as Hindi almost on a daily basis going ahead.